Hey everyone, it's Mr. Most Days Off with a couple of quick announcements before we begin today's Season 5 Finale Spectacular. First of all, we recently ran a very fun contest, the worst contest ever. We are giving away 5 early release copies of Mike Reese's new book coming out this summer, Springfield Confidential, and that contest has come to an end. We have selected our 5 winners, and I just wanted to make sure to formally congratulate them here on the actual podcast. We announced it a few weeks ago on Behind the Diddly, which if you're not already following us on YouTube, shame on you. You should totally be keeping up with that little behind-the-scenes program I do. And that's where we initially made the announcements, but just so we're clear, our 5 winners, Carwin Walker. And check out Carwin's podcast, Waffle Productions, it's at WAFL Productions. We also had Chris Manley, For DeHorde 2, Ray Walden, and Nick Carter. Congratulations to our 5 worst contest ever winners. Also, another very special announcement. My soul has been purchased on Patreon, and I want to give a huge thank you to our newest Patreon contributor, Timothy Burleson. Timothy has joined at the $5 level and now owns my soul, but it can be shared with anyone else who would also like to own my soul. Of course, along with the soul, he's going to get some Best Darn Diddly Review Show stickers and this shout out right here. Please consider joining Timothy Burleson in supporting the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. We have a lot of new goals and rewards that were just added, so if you haven't looked at the page, check it out. And if there's something that you are specifically looking for, that you're like, hey, this is what I want in a Simpsons podcast, this is what would make me throw down some real-life dollars to be entertained on a weekly basis, give us a shout out. You can hit me up on Twitter at bestdarndiddly, or you can email at bestdarndiddly@gmail.com. But that's enough of me rambling. Congratulations again to our 5 worst contest ever winners, and thank you again to Timothy Burleson. For now, let's get on with today's Best Darn Diddly Review Show. Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons, or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by 2 dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. And this week, don't call it a review show, because we're not reviewing shit. We are celebrating the end of Season 5 with our Season 5 Finale Spectacular. Spectacular! And the other voice you're hearing, as always, is your co-host with the most, Richie the WizKid. How you doing today, Rich?
You know, I want to say, if The Simpsons can do a clip show once every year, we can do a season finale spectacular once every year, I believe.
I think we can manage, except we'd be doing more like 2 a year, because it only takes us about 6 months. In fact, only 5 months, Richie. 5 months ago was when we last had a season finale show.
I'm just saying it's the season of The Simpsons. That's the way that I was marketing it. But, 1, 2, 15, what's the difference, right?
Exactly.
With that being said, I don't think we could set the show up any better than that. I will throw it back to you. The man, the myth, the Captain McAllister. Arr! It is Miles.
Well, sir, congratulations once again. I've said it every year so far, but we have made it through yet another season of The Simpsons. How you feeling so far about Season 5?
Well, we said last year during the season finale show that Season 4 had been the best one up to that point. I gotta say that I enjoyed Season 5 more than I did Season 4.
I think I have to agree that we have a new champion.
Every year of the show up to this point, the show's just gotten better and better every season. And you gotta love that as a show that like you keep going uphill and climbing that mountain of greatness. And it's just great. I hate to say the word great so often, but it was magnificent, omnipotently awesome. I don't know. I'm going to throw random words together.
Well, I said it earlier in your intro, but it really does astound me because it's been almost 5 months to the day. In fact, it's like 5 months and 5 days or something like that. Our finale show for Season 4 aired on October 22nd of 2017. when we do it this way with the one episode each week, it seems like such a long time ago, but then you go back and it's like October really wasn't that far away, but it feels like an eternity since we reviewed Homer's Barbershop Quartet, which again would have been at the end of October last year.
Don't worry, listeners, your math skills aren't wrong. It's just we recorded the show a little bit in advance, so this probably won't air until 6 months after our last review show.
Oh, that's a good point. I wasn't even accounting for our little deviation with the fact that we do record. In fact, we're like 3.5 weeks ahead right now because we had a few splits there at the end of this last season.
Yeah, so it's a good half year between each review show, but I think that's a good pace. I mean, there's, 22 episodes in a season? So if it's 22 weeks plus a finale and a few splits, that's about half a year per season.
Well, and we've talked about it between the two of us, but I personally hope that The Simpsons just keeps going on long enough that we actually catch them, and this show will eventually transition to a weekly review of the most recent episode that airs.
That would be... I don't know.
It's got to go into the season 40, I think, to catch it. Not quite that long. That's not quite right. I've done the math. It's a while out. Yeah, it's like 37, I want to say.
Well, let's get on topic. We can worry about season 37 when we get there. Let's start with season 5.
Yeah, so just overall, you mentioned that season 5 is your favorite season so far. I think I have to wholeheartedly agree with you. We said about season 4, and I believe we both agree, that season 4 felt like the first really solid season of The Simpsons. And what I mean by that is there wasn't a single dud episode anywhere in the lineup. There wasn't an episode that didn't feel like The Simpsons.
That is correct.
And that continued into season 5 for sure. All of these episodes, in fact, I was really struggling to come up with a bottom one. Spoiler alert, the last few weeks helped a little bit, but it was becoming a real struggle as we approached the end of the season, where I was like, which episode am I going to pick to be my least favorite? It was very, very tough.
Well, I think by what you said, I can guess which episode you picked as your least favorite, which is not the one that I picked as my least favorite, which is kind of cool because we don't always have to agree on everything. That makes for better radio voices. However, I will say this season tops seasons past because when I was looking at all the episodes, I actually remembered a lot of the episodes in the earlier parts of the season way better than I ever had before in any previous season. So it was a lot more fun to do the list this time around because everything was so vivid in my mind still. And speaking of lists, I believe it's time for us to start on our top 5 list immediately this time.
I absolutely agree with you. I told you last time I was being a little cheeky, trying to, dodge the top 5 over and over again, and you tried your hardest, and I was totally fucking with you, and I think we should just get the top 5 out of the way. But since you brought it up,
you weren't fucking with me. You just didn't want to do it.
Well, since you brought it up, though, it would just be criminal not to at least talk about the concepts, though, since we're talking in general about season 5. A lot of the episodes that we talked about this season, we mentioned Mirken was known for being a little bit more surreal and some pretty crazy things happened. We mentioned it several times from the commentary, but overall this season, they talked about how the freedom of doing a cartoon like The Simpsons allows them to essentially play with an infinite budget. They don't really have an infinite budget, but what I mean is if they were doing this on an actual sitcom with real human actors, there is no way that they could afford to 1 week send their lead star into space and then another week have the, female lead go on a chase in a convertible. That shit cost a lot of money to record if you're doing it in real life versus a cartoon. You can draw pretty much anything for about the same price. And it really creates this unusual world that is getting to be fully explored by this show in a way that I don't think any other cartoon had ever done up until this point.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the longest run-on sentence you'll ever hear. Almost infinite like the budget of The Simpsons. But to go opposed to that, my patience is not infinite, Miles, and I'm done with this game, okay? I am done with this game. You completely sidestepped the top 5. You said top 5 and threw out these fancy little song and dance like Mr. Burns to go to the lobby and get himself a treat. and then you just went right by it, just flew by. I'm done.
All right.
I quit.
We'll get to it. But no, honestly, I want to hear about your thoughts about that. Like, what were some of your favorite moments that you saw this season that you would not be able to see on a live action sitcom?
When Homer taught school. You will never see that on any kind of television program ever. No one's ever taught anything. No, I think I have to go with, like, a lot of the Cape Fear episode, I think, is something that would have been a really big budget to have, like, a moving houseboat going down this way.
Oh, anytime you're dealing with water on a production, it, like, quadruples the cost.
Well, fair enough, though. In most movies and television shows, water is used quite frequently. And I've talked about this before on our show, I believe, but whenever you see shots out in the street, like with chases or people like running out of the street chasing bad guys, if you look at the ground, the street's almost always wet because that gives better depth perception over the camera whenever you can see that water on the ground. It just makes things a lot more visible. So there is water in a lot of productions, but not
I meant being on the water is really
I knew what you meant. I knew what
totally.
You meant.
But no, that's a very valid point about giving the camera more depth and using water as a tool in a lot of ways.
But I just think Cape Fear overall had a lot of stuff in it that you definitely can't afford on television, like giant elephants trampling a person and hockey masks and chainsaws on a boat. And then even the song and dance number at the end, that alone would have cost way too much money to do.
I mean, there was banners and fireworks and pyro. There was a lot that went into that production.
And so many rakes.
For Bart.
So many rakes.
I mean, the rake budget alone would have actually gotten pretty out of hand, if we're being honest. But yeah, there's a lot of things. I mean, I think the obvious one is Homer going to space. I think that would be really
absolutely
difficult. Honestly, the other one would be Bart gets an elephant. You talked about the elephant parade in Cape Fear, but there's an entire episode where a suburban family gets an elephant. Like, that would cost money.
And gets trapped in a tar pit.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to cost some money to have an elephant handler and probably some safety crew. Like, I don't really know the ins and outs of ordering an elephant for a production.
Have a small child
but
get put in an elephant's mouth.
Right, yeah, those are certain things you just probably couldn't get away with at all. You'd have to have a separate animatronic elephant just to make that happen.
Have a giant child get put in the elephant's mouth.
But we talked about the infinite budget. This season also almost seemed to have an infinite number of jokes. And if you look at our splitsider.com all the way back from 2010 breakdown of the jokes per minute used in The Simpsons, there's a good reason for that. This is just shy of season 4's joke count at 9.6 jokes per minute per episode. 9.6 jokes a minute. That's over 200 jokes in a standard Simpsons episode. That's insane to think about.
And through the first 12 seasons, this will be the third highest season of all of jokes per minute. So that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I think it's actually fourth, isn't it? We got season 12 at 11.4, season 4 at 10.3.
Oh, I wasn't
7.
including the end of the spectrum.
Yeah,
11.4, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's when Al Jean takes back over, who was a big part of the season 3 and season 4. So be real curious to see what type of transitions occur in season 12. But for now, we're actually just talking mainly about the transition from Al Jean and Mike Reese in 4 to Dave Mirken in season 5. And the jokes are very comparable. Like, there's really not a very large deviation here. Going into next season, which is also a Dave Mirken era episode, and it's one of his that he show ran for, it's going to drop again slightly from 9.6 to 9.0.
But, like, through a grand scheme of a season, that could be a lot of jokes, but for individual episodes, I don't think you're going to notice a big difference.
No, I don't think so at all. And I think that in a lot of ways, season 4 and season 5 do feel similar to each other. I mean, hell, there's a couple of episodes that are holdovers from the previous season, like Cape Fear and Homer's Barbershop Quartet. There's definitely a lot of similarities. I think that, Dave Mirken, when he took over, I think he made it a goal to be respectful to what was created. And I think that was very important for the show's success. But you and I have also very much talked about the idea that, and other people, it's not our original idea, but Mirken definitely brings
but it isn't.
Mirken brings a quality to the show, and it is surreal, but it's also very dark.
It's something just different enough where you, as an adult, when you're watching it and you know there's different showrunners, you can pick up on it and notice it. And it's very interesting because we've talked about this before as well. As a child, you don't notice there's different showrunners. You don't pay attention to the names outside of the actors, really. But knowing that it's different people and seeing just the little tweaks to how the show is presented is actually really fun to notice.
Yeah, that's actually a really fun point that you just made there. And that we've talked about a big part, I think, of this podcast is discussing how we feel about this show as adults compared to how we feel about the show as children. And I agree with you that I don't think that as a child, I would have even noticed at all a difference. I think that this would have just, if I was watching a marathon of The Simpsons and there's season 4, season 3, season 5 episodes all mixed together, for the most part, I'm not going to see a lot of discrepancy in those episodes. As a child, I think they're going to very much flow just about the same. But I think that if you do pay attention to those opening credits and you do realize how there's been a significant change at the head of the ship, you can see a pattern that arises in these Mirken episodes.
You can see a style that's just slightly different from the other styles. I mean, you'll have a lot of the same writers. Some writers change out over time, but you have people that have their stamp on certain things, but then the showrunner as a whole, it's their vision and their final say on a lot of stuff. So that changes the product slightly. And I mean, I'm sure there's lots of adults that don't even notice this if you go back and rewatch The Simpsons. And it's because we're doing the show that we are going to notice it. But the only other show I can really point out where you notice stuff like this would be Community, when Dan Harmon wasn't on for the 1 year.
Yeah, big time.
You completely have a different feeling for the show. And that's the best comparison I can draw for this kind of instance. But this one was a much lesser scale change, but just enough of a change where you could clearly notice it.
I'm really proud of you for getting in our Community reference for the quota. I think we should actually increase that and try to get more of those into our podcast. Very well done, sir. And I think that's a perfect example.
I think we should ask Dan Harmon to come on the show and review an episode of The Simpsons with us.
Well, he was just recently on an episode of The Simpsons, so he's a fan of the show.
So you're saying we just have to wait until we hit season 29 and then we can ask him to be on the show?
Let's totally harass him until he agrees to shut us up. Agrees to come on the podcast.
We could even let Dan Harmon be drunk on the show if he wants to be. Hell, that would be an even more fun episode if we all got to drink while we reviewed the show.
Do a drinking. Hey, we'll get that best darn diddly drinking game in the works immediately. Just staying on the topic of Dave Mirken and being a little bit dark, are there any specific episodes that jumped out to you that really made a significant change in your mind or really just stood out as being that difference we're talking about with it being a different showrunner?
I will say this, Miles, knowing how much a fan of lists you are, I have come up with some darkest Mirken moments, if you will. So I think we should definitely discuss some Mirken moments right after this break.
Hi, it's Mike Reese. I've been writing for The Simpsons for 30 years. I ran the show in seasons 3 and 4. I created The Critic. And now I've written a book. It's called Springfield Confidential, and it is the first insider's look at The Simpsons. It's filled with secrets, scandals, and tales of censorship and celebrities. It's a great book. It's like a Simpsons episode. It's fast, it's smart, and it's packed with hundreds of jokes, some of them funny. Please buy Springfield Confidential. You can order it now on Amazon.com.
All right, Richie, so I am dying to hear this bonus list that you're bringing to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. I swear, I was actually just about to do my top 5, bottom 1 up. I literally, that was the next thing out of my mouth. And then you're like, I've got this whole other new list. So let's hear your list of Mirken moments. Tell us what a Mirken moment is and give us some examples.
Well, a Mirken moment in my mind is something that is clearly what we were just talking about, where the change in showrunner, and Dave Mirken's a little bit of a darker person when it comes to presentation of The Simpsons.
And just kind of his sense of humor in general seems to be darker throughout the even on like the commentary tracks. He just has that dry, dark sense of humor.
Right. So there's certain things that have popped up throughout the season that you even talked about from the commentary where they're clearly got that Mirken stamp on it where you're like, he's the one that had to push this through. So, for example, the first one I thought of right off the top of my head is in the episode Homer Loves Flanders, when Flanders is literally having that dream where he's up in the tower shooting all the people. You go, there's a Homer, and he's shooting
like the Vertigo,
yeah,
the parody, that was a very dark moment. I mean, Flanders was literally on a killing spree in that scene.
But that's clearly a Mirken moment there. Like, you won't see that on another season of The Simpsons, probably. I don't know though. We got a whole lot more to go through.
Probably not.
I can't say for sure. I haven't seen all the episodes, which is really weird for me to say. I never thought I would say that about The Simpsons.
Well, it's hard to keep up with. I mean, I'm certain there's some I've missed too, but I want to hear more of these Mirken moments.
Well, even in our most recent podcast about Homer betraying Marge's trust in the finale, Secrets to a Successful Marriage, his whole idea of wanting to put such a rift between Homer and Marge that you're unsure whether they'll be able to fix it, with Homer doing the worst thing he could ever possibly do. I mean, that's a Mirken moment. It's stretched out a lot more, but there's that thing. There's also in Deep Space Homer, the whole face-changing thing with Homer and Barney when they're doing the astronaut training and their faces change, and Nixon. And
the one that Matt Groening specifically really hates.
Yeah, and it's like, I wasn't a big fan of that either. It just seemed so random, but like, I mean, I remember it from when I was a child even, but that's clearly a Mirken moment.
About the secrets of a successful marriage, too. Like, in that commentary track, that really was, he said that was his idea. He had brought the idea that he wanted there to be such a big, giant fight with Homer and Marge that you thought surely they weren't actually going to be able to recover from this one. And he didn't even have the idea for the Homer teaching a class portion. That was actually a separate script that was being written by Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein, I believe, who also will become showrunners in the not too distant future. They had this concept where Homer was going to be a teacher, and Mirken had the idea that there was this giant fight, and they kind of married their scripts together to become one story. And to be fair, that was a really good fit, like the way they tied all that together. But the dark part of that was 100% Mirken, according to himself on the commentary.
Well, and probably my favorite one of the whole season, just because it bothered me so much as a child, is the Treehouse of Horror one, where you actually see Mr. Burns bite and turn Bart into a vampire. And it just always made me so upset because Bart was the hero through my entire childhood of The Simpsons. Bart was the hero, and he falls before even the end of the episode. And then he's floating outside Lisa's room, and like all the family are vampires. And I just felt like it was slightly darker and more twisted than other Treehouse of Horrors in my mind, at least. And I feel like that's a hardcore Mirken moment.
I think that for sure was the first time that the Treehouse of Horror was truly something that could scare a child pretty good. I think that the right age person would be pretty terrified in that moment.
I completely agree with that because it got to me as a child, so I can't disagree with you. And I believe you said in the episode Bart Gets Famous that it was actually Mirken's idea for the Box Factory tour, which is just so dry and stupid that it's funny.
And I can't remember who it was on the commentary on that one, but I still just love the fact that they were getting notes like, this is too boring, and they're just writing back, that's the point. Like,
but that just seemed kind of like a Mirken-led campaign. And again, I'm not saying that it was, it just, in my mind, that seemed like a perfect Mirken moment. And then the last two I have, I'm not sure, but did we say on Boy Scouts in the Hood, the Friday the 13th thing at the end with him killing what's his face? Oh my gosh, who was the guest star on that? Ernest Bornheim or whoever that was. When he comes out from the bushes, the last moment.
Yeah, totally.
I assume he was watching Cape Fear and got that idea, so decided to put it in an actual episode. I don't know. Even though they're in the same season. Even though they were written in different seasons. And then the last one I wanted to point out was in the episode Bart's Inner Child, where they have the tramboline and all the kids are laying injured in the field.
Oh, yeah, that was a very
Gone
dark
with the Wind
image.
thing.
Yeah, very good example.
So, but the trampoline one and the Friday the trampoline one and the Treehouse of Horror were the two like biggest that stuck out in my mind.
No, I think those are all great examples of dark jokes or dark imagery, really, in a lot of these that Mirken season provided. There was also a couple of jokes, and there's one that specifically jumps out in my mind. I have no idea what episode it was on. We've watched way too many of season 5 for us to figure that out, or for me to figure that out. But there's a scene where Grandpa, I think, was riding a bike, and he crashed, and he landed in an open grave. And after evaluating it for a few minutes, he's like, this actually isn't so bad. And that's a really dark joke. Like, it's funny, but like, that's, I think, something that his sense of humor definitely brought to the table.
Agreed. Very much so. Nice one there, Miles. I like that.
Yeah. So those are some great examples of the Mirken moments. That was a great list, Richie. Well done, sir. And I think with a list like that, I mean, I was, again, about to move on to my top 5's bottom 1, but I don't think that my list can follow that great list, so we need to put some padding in here.
I have no idea what you're talking about when you say the word list.
I think it's time that we hear from the campaign trail, Rich. Mr. Most Days Off for President, it's still going hot. The people are running wild with Mr. Most Days Off fever.
I think it's a very, very high trending topic among the Twitter followers, on just like even ones that aren't following our show. I think this whole Mr. Most Days Off for President thing, we might be able to get behind this 100%. I mean, especially if you have somebody like me helping you out behind the scenes. I mean, I'm not going to be, the Putin to your Trump or anything, but I'm just saying that I think we can go strong with this.
Oh, we're a strong team. And apparently I'm a little bit surprised just with the way the world is today. I was always very fond of our slogan, the just no bullshit party. We're just going to stop doing things that are stupid. But it turns out Americans are behind this concept. Americans want to stop doing stupid shit collectively. And that, I think, is the message that's reaching the hearts of Americans all over this beautiful country, where they're just fed up with the nonsense that's constantly happening, with stupid things that are illegal that shouldn't be, with the laws that get written just to be anti certain groups that are terrible. This no bullshit concept, it's really popular, and I'm so glad that the people are
Miles, I gotta cut you off there. We have somebody interrupting our show, and they're just very adamant that they want to talk to you. I didn't even know we had a phone line.
We don't have a caller line set up. What are you talking about?
Hello, Miles. Hello, Richie.
Oh, God.
I'm a huge fan of the show. You know this already. We talked a few weeks ago. Miles, I just want to say, I think it's fantastic what you do. You are a true American person.
Oh, are you endorsing me for president, Mr. President? Are you endorsing my campaign?
Miles. You can't just be president, okay? I already have the job, you see. And, my hands are so big and I do so many things that, it is my job. And you can't take the presidency away from the president.
Well,
Who do
sir,
you think you are, me?
You know that the term, they only last for 4 years. And I mean, some go for 8, a lot do actually, but you have to run again. And I'm going to be competing against you in 2020. I'm literally trying to take your job.
Okay, Miles. I see where you've been misinformed with all the fake news out there, but you clearly don't know how a presidency works and how a term works, okay? You see, even FDR, he could have gone a lot longer than he actually did, but he only had like 15 terms as president. He could have gone on forever, I'm pretty sure.
Sir, has Putin not let you know how this works? Like, you're running again in just 3 years now. 2 years. It's 2020. That's when you're...
2 years or 3. I see how this is, Miles. I see. See, this is the problem with America today, okay? This is why I took all the money out of the education program, because kids aren't learning anything. 2 or 3, I mean, those are 2 completely different numbers. The next thing you're going to tell me is all it takes to be president is to be naturally born, 35 years old, and live in the United States for at least 14 consecutive years.
Yeah, that I'm actually impressed, sir. Very spot on with your knowledge of how to become president. Very good.
Wait, what? Oh, but anyways, I mean, this is all fun and everything, but this has to stop, Miles. I mean, I am your biggest fan. And, I have a lot of great connections. I mean, my connections are so massive, you wouldn't even believe it. Stormy Daniels loves my connections. And I just want to say, my number 1 follower and number 1 supporter and fan, Dr. Andrew Briseño, completely agrees with me on all this.
Wow, that's actually really surprising. I would have thought that Dr. Andrew Briseño would have been completely out of line with you. I'm actually a little disappointed to hear that. But, sir, I do need to inform you the hashtag Mr. Most Days Off for president. It's trending as we speak right now. I'm going to be 35 in 2020. I'm born in the United States, and I've been here for at least 14 years. I'm naturally born here. I have a birth certificate, sir. I will be happy to show you, and it is real. It's a non-issue. We've got it all covered. I'm coming for your job in a few short years.
Well, you clearly, again, don't see how the political campaign trail works, Miles. I take vacations all the time. I've never been in the country for 14 years straight, and yet, look where I am. I mean, my good friend Arnold Schwarzenegger could probably be president here on this next 2020 term if he wants to be. Or maybe even The Rock.
Okay, you know what?
He thinks The Rock is a U.S. citizen.
I've had enough of this, sir. We didn't invite you here. You're not welcome here. Like, we're not doing this. It's Mr. Most Days Off for president. Richie, can you disconnect the caller? I don't know how we had this happen, but we're done here.
I think he just went away, man. I have no idea where does the call-in line even come from? I don't even have a phone on right now.
Yeah, man. Okay, well, it seems like he's gone, so good job. Let's make sure we don't let that happen again. I'm not sure where that's coming from either.
I just want to say one more thing, Miles.
Oh, God.
If you look at my Twitter feed right now, it shows many conversations where Dr. Andrew Briseño talks about how much he has love for me, okay? So I do not say fake stories. I am your president, and you will bow before me and my massive, massive hands.
All right, well, I'm sad to know that you're a fan, but since you are and you mentioned Twitter, can I get a retweet on that hashtag, Mr. Most Days Off?
I'm sorry, I need to go play golf. I will talk to you boys later. Love the show. Absolutely love the show.
You know what, Mr. President? Enough is enough. Before you go, I am challenging you to a debate. That's Mr. Most Days Off before sitting President Donald Trump, if you're not impeached by then. And that's going to be on our 100th podcast.
Miles, I think you've forgotten all of my policies. There is no such thing as a rebate for the American populace any longer, okay?
I'm going to take that as a yes. Disconnect the caller. We'll see you on our 100th podcast, Mr. President.
Keep up the great work, fellas.
Get the fuck off our program. Richie, are we done here? Like, is he gone? Can you verify that he is not going to be interrupting any longer?
I don't know, but I think everybody should tweet at the real, whatever his hashtag or Twitter handle is, and get him to actually have a debate with Miles here, because I mean that would be some good podcasting.
Yeah, fucking A. Tag at POTUS and hashtag Mr. Most Days Off for president. I am 100% all for this. I'm not saying I'm a smart man, but goddamn it, I'm smarter than that dude. I can handle that.
Well, he would just say, I would not say that I'm a smart man, and then that would be the end of his statement.
Oh, so that was pretty awful.
What the heck, Andy?
Yeah, seriously, Dr. Andrew Briseño endorsing that is shocking news, and I'm sure it is 100% accurate with the source it's come from and all. I just couldn't imagine that being wrong.
I mean, if you can't trust the president, who can you trust?
Who can you trust? But you know what? That was pretty awful. I'm sorry again. He just keeps coming in, grabbing us right by the podcast. We are not endorsing him at all in any way, shape, or form. But you know what? We do have a lot of people on this program that we actually invited to be here. And I think we should take a few moments now. Again, just real quick. This is important that we say thank you to all of our great guests we've had on the show this season. And then I definitely am going to get to that top 5 100%. That's the next thing on my bill here that we're going to get to as soon as we get done thanking everyone who made Best Darn Diddly such a great season this season. And we have to start with Carolyn Omine. She joined us for our second episode, Cape Fear, and oh my gosh, what a pleasure to talk to. Like 2.5 hours of conversation. This is a busy woman. She is currently working on The Simpsons. She's been there for 20 years, and she was so generous with her time to come and take, like I said, like 2.5 hours to talk to us about an episode that we're so fond of. And just, honestly, great conversation, a lot of fun. Can't say enough nice things about Carolyn Omine.
And I like how we've had 2 different Simpsons writers on the show, but she brought a completely different perspective and different behind-the-scenes stuff than what Michael Price did as well. So, like, you get to paint this bigger picture of how everything goes on behind the scenes at The Simpsons. And it was so much fun to learn a little bit more about the show that we love so much.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's so cool to get different perspectives from different careers, even though they have, very similar paths in so many ways. They have very unique stories, and a lot of fun getting to hear hers. Also glad that we were able to have Brittany Braddock, the stoner princess, on to join us for the Treehouse of Horror 4 review. Make sure you go and check out Memphamous. That's her. They do everything that's live entertainment in Memphis, Tennessee. Super cool chick to follow on Twitter as well, at the Party 420. Go and check her out, and we can't thank her enough.
Thank you again for my alien.
Yeah, that was super dope of you.
You staring me down right now. And then we had somebody come on and talk about gambling as well with us, and it wasn't even
Just
Simpsons
counting
related.
cards.
Oh wait, yes it was. Thank you to our good buddy Ripken from the Derailers podcast, but that was so much fun to talk about an episode that we weren't even sure anybody would want to pick to be on, but he brought some very interesting ideas on and reasoning for why he picked that episode. So thanks to Ripken, as always, for being a good friend and a great fellow podcaster.
And check out the Derailers podcast. I'm always going to have a special place in my heart for them because they were created right here on our podcast. Essentially, they're our baby, Richie. That's how I like to think of it. No, they're a wonderful podcast, and we're so excited. We had Ripken on this season. We'll be having Jenny Bean on, the female derailer, on the show this next season, and we can't wait to chat with her. That'll be coming up soon. We were also so thrilled to have Danny Mac, the creator, the producer, the director, the actor, the star of all of the above in the movie Heel Kick, which I honestly can truly say this is not just because he was nice and cool to talk to on the show and all that, but I honestly think that might be the best wrestling movie available out there right now. I'm a big fan of Ready to Rumble, but there's always parts of that movie that are a little cringeworthy, I think we can all admit. Heel Kick treats wrestling with respect and is also absolutely hilarious. Go and check out Danny Mac on Twitter. He's always working. He's in a new commercial I see pop up on TV all the time. Great dude. And check out the movie Heel Kick. And check out our interview with him on our review of Homer the Vigilante.
Yeah, he was a lot of fun to talk with, and it was great just hearing his attitude about everything all around the process and whatnot. And you got to respect somebody that puts their entire everything into something they've created, and it was great to see it pay off for him.
Yeah, totally.
And then, keeping the streak alive, we had Dr. Andrew Briseño, friend of the president, on for Lisa versus Malibu Stacy. Number one fan, I guess, is what he is now.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I hope that doesn't qualify as like slander or libel, but I'm sure people know it's fine. Like if this is his university listening, we are fucking with this dude. Everyone else, we're totally serious.
Wink, wink. Hello, Mr. Number One fan. Foot stomp, foot stomp.
And we already have Dr. Andy Briseño scheduled to be back on for season 6, so the streak will continue. We look forward to all of those future conversations. Always have fun talking to Andy. And a new guest to the show this season, but a guest that I very much want to have back on in the future, Sean Tahoe from the Writer's Bone podcast provided a lot of fun conversation, so much so that we actually had to cut it into 2 parts as we discussed the episode Burns Air.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. We weren't really sure how the conversation would go. We knew it'd be fun either way, but Sean brought it. Sean brought it hardcore, and that was so much fun. That was a very funny conversation, and we can't wait to talk to you again, man.
Definitely.
Last but not least, I would say on par with every other guest we've ever had because we love all our guests equally, and yes, that sounds appropriate.
That's very inclusive of you.
Thank you. But we had Michael Price back on the show for Sweet Seymour Skinner's Badass song, and that was so much fun to get some insider scoop on the new season of F is for Family.
I still get a kick out of the idea that Mike Price was like, I'll come back on the show if you'll have me. It's just like, haha, good one, Mike. Such a cool dude. So thrilled to have him on for a second time. That's a lot of fun. Just the fact that he was, we didn't scare him off with Homer the Heretic. He was totally down, and he's scheduled to come back on again when we get close to the release of F is for Family. Stay tuned. That's season 3, of course. Stay tuned for more information on that because, of course, we'll spread the word about that show just as soon as we possibly can. Maybe when we're 60, we can talk about how, we watched the F is for Family show on whatever replaces podcasting in the future.
Whoa, Price. Okay, calm down a little bit. I know you want to be all over our show left and right, but we got to spread it out a little bit, buddy. I mean, calm down.
We do have a lot of other people on our wish list. I've tweeted at her a few times, and I know it's a long shot, but I would absolutely die to have Nancy Cartwright join us to have a conversation about The Simpsons. Dan Castellaneta, he's in that same boat. Dave Mirken, Yeardley Smith, Hank Azaria. There's so many. From the sound artists, the Foley, the writers, the producers, the
cartoonists.
The cartoonists. We want to talk to you, the comic book writers, everyone. Reach out. We'd love to talk to you and have you join us on the show to discuss one of our favorite shows of all time.
Well put, sir. Well put. If it's Simpsons related, you'll bet we can relate to it.
Absolutely. And we look forward to having a lot of other great guests on next season as well. Not everyone that will be working on The Simpsons, of course, because we like to mix it up on this show, but we've got a lot of great guests. Some that have worked on The Simpsons, since we're throwing it out there. We'll save that for now, but we have other podcasters coming on the show. We have some other friends of ours, and it's going to be a great season looking on into season 6. But before we get to that, I think it's time. Enough stalling. We've talked about everything we need to talk about for season 5. Let's do our top 5 episodes, our bottom 1 episodes. I'm going to go ahead and get us started.
Nope.
Right after this
I'm
message
cutting you off right
from
now. I don't believe this is happening yet, so I'm just going to, quote-unquote, derail this current conversations. And you know what? You see that thing way off there in the distance? I'm bringing it up to this moment in time right now for this commercial break from our Podern family.
I'm Jay.
I'm Bob.
And I'm Corey.
We are the Cretans Guild.
We're a trio of man-children whose friendship predates The Lion King, Green Day's Dookie, the N64, and the Chunnel.
We have backgrounds working in television, video games, radio broadcasting, creative writing, and pizza delivery. That's a large cheese, right?
On our podcast, Nerd or Not, you'll hear us talk about board games, TV, movies, comics, collectibles, video games, wrestling, theme parks. We even did a segment on pizza.
So check and listen to us on Podbean, iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. And check out our socials on Twitter and Instagram under Cretans Guild.
Welcome to the Guild.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is time, actually time, for our top 5 and bottom 1 lists for this season's. And I'm going to go ahead and get us started for real this time. I think this one might surprise you. It snuck in as I was finalizing my list. My 5th favorite episode of the season, Last Temptation of Homer.
Oh, wow. That does surprise me a little bit, actually.
You
Did
know,
not see that one coming.
I had, as usual, a very hard time with this season. I had got it down to a top 10 episodes, and I was really struggling to squeeze them down into the top 5. I had to make some cuts that I'm hurt by, honestly. Like, I offended myself on some of the episodes I had to cut to squeeze this into top 5. But the Last Temptation of Homer, specifically this last watch through, there was something about it that I think really had that quality that I really enjoy discovering in this podcast, and that I loved that episode as a kid, and I didn't really understand the heart of that episode at all. Like, I got the basic concept of what cheating is and things of that nature, but that is an episode that I felt was so significantly different, revisiting it as an adult with so much layered, just not only humor, but also dramatic elements of the dynamic between Marge and Homer, that episode, I think, stands out, and it doesn't even really fit into the rest of the episodes that usually feature Marge and Homer. We even talked about it during the review of that episode. Marge was barely in that episode, and it really created a interesting dynamic watching it through as an adult.
It created an opportunity where, like, you could see why Homer might go away from her in that, and especially because for the first, 90% of the episode, you see Marge looking her worst. So it's that whole idea of, like, accepting your spouse at their worst and their best, and that, like, even seeing that side of Marge literally on his shirts, that's still who he's picking. And that's what makes Marge and Homer right there, is that's what they always do. She accepts Homer at his worst, and even though it's on a much smaller scale, Homer's accepting Marge at her much smaller worst.
Much smaller worst, absolutely. And then I think you also have to give big props to Michelle Pfeiffer's performance of Mindy in that episode, and just how cool it was to see like the idea that maybe Marge wasn't Homer's perfect woman. Like maybe there was a more perfect woman for Homer, but his commitment and love for Marge essentially overcame that in the long run, of course. Again, though, Michelle Pfeiffer somehow took a cartoon character and made her sexy as fuck, even while eating a donut. Like, amazing character work there.
That character's going to be so fat later in life, let's be honest.
Sure, that's a short-lived window. We don't want to see that character in season 25.
I think you do, though. I think you end up seeing her again.
So, for you, sir, your number 5 episode of season 5.
Well, to put the thought process behind on me on here, I actually came up with about a top 8 list, so I only had to cut 3, and then rearrange the order on my top 5. My issue with this season in general was there was one joke in certain episodes where I was like, this joke alone makes me want to put it higher up, and I thought, but a joke isn't a full episode, and I want to take the full episode and put those into the top 5. So that made it a little easier to cut a couple episodes out of my top 5 list. But I honestly, this episode I thought would be towards the top, if not at the top of my list. And just going back and rewatching it and reliving the moments, I pushed it further down on my list, but it's still worthy of being in the top 5, and that is Deep Space Homer.
Oh, wow. Very, very close to the edge. And I know, at least for myself, that was the episode that I predicted would be my number 1 going into the season. Time will tell on that very shortly. But for you, I know you also had that as a preview, like before we watched the show again, you had that on your list as contender for possible best of the season. And to see that it just barely skated into the top 5 surprises me a little bit, I must say.
Yeah, I honestly, after we got through the end of the season, before I started thinking about all the episodes together, I thought it would finish at number 2. I honestly did. But I just thought, it's still funny like I remember it to me, but I feel like what you did with Last Temptation of Homer, there's moments in other episodes, and there's feeling in other episodes and moments that you didn't quite catch when you were younger that I just feel like make a lot of the relationships in these other episodes a lot more meaningful to me than Homer just being an idiot who accidentally gets to go in space. But the inanimate carbon rod did bring the episode back.
That's a big character. We'll talk about characters a little later, but that's definitely a big, big plus for that episode. For me, I'll go ahead and come back with my 4th favorite episode of the season, and I'll admit, this one I think might have squeezed out some episodes that quite honestly could be better than it, but I have such a fondness for this style of comedy that I've got to give it up to Homer Goes to College. A tribute to great movies like Animal House that I absolutely grew up on and still watch to this day. I just love that style of raunchy college humor. I never grew out of it. It is what it is. Homer Goes to College, my number 4 pick.
I am not surprised it's in your top 5 list, but I really enjoyed your explanation of it because it just let people see inside your mind kind of right there where because of the style of episode it is that it kicked out other ones. It makes total sense, and I'm glad that you wholeheartedly just own it like that. That makes... Thank you, Miles. Thank you. I like that a lot. I'm not being sarcastic. I'm being sincere here. I'm glad that you let people see inside your brain there.
Hey, I try to be as open as I can on this show. I want people to have a glimpse inside my head. It's a fun place to live in.
He's a man you can trust, so vote him into the POTUS.
Ooh, I like that. Man, you're good. I'm so glad to have you on my team now, Richie. This is gonna be a big swing This is going to be a big swing for my campaign. I can't say thank you enough for your support.
I'll be the Alexander Hamilton to your Thomas Jefferson, except I don't want to get shot by anybody at the end of the day.
Yeah, we'll try to avoid bullets, but still, hashtag MrMostDaysOff for president.
All right, well, back to the list. My number 4 episode, I can't go wrong with a Sideshow Bob character. My number 4 episode is Cape Fear, and I don't really think this episode needs much explanation. It's a Sideshow Bob episode. It's got some really funny moments in it. I love the who wants to take the shortcuts? Yay! No! Stuff like that. The whole Mr. Thompson bit. And just Kelsey Grammer in general and the show tunes ending and Bart outsmarting him once again. What's not to love?
Absolutely. And I mean, just with our experience of getting to review this one with Carolyn Omine, who again was just such a fun person to talk with for such a large amount of her precious time. So very good choice. I actually, again, though, if anything, I'm surprised that this one is clinging towards the bottom of your top 5. I would have expected you to have this near the top, if not at the top. So
my number 3 and 2 episodes really caught me off guard. It's so much like how Ralph Loves Lisa episode rose all the way to the top of my list. Like my number 2 and number 3 just kind of threw me off guard.
Wow, I'm excited to get to them, but I'm going to go ahead and jump back in with my number 3 episode, and that is going to be Deep Space Homer. You pretty much already said the reasons why. Again, this episode, when I first looked at the list before we rewatched any of them, I said, Deep Space Homer is going to be hard to beat, just with the fondness I have for that episode, and I have to say that it absolutely lived up to my expectations. I remembered it being a great episode. It was a great episode, and arguably of the season, it probably had the most interesting commentary to listen to. There's a lot of great commentary this season. That was actually a lot of fun getting to visit that for the podcast, but the stories of them actually sending the Simpsons to space, and like the fact that DVD is on the space shuttle and that's told in that story on that commentary, I think in some ways I almost enjoyed the commentary viewing more than the reviewing, just because it was a fresh take on something that was so familiar to me.
And I like that aspect where, we talked about this in the last season finale, Spectacular, where our personal connection with the episode and how we view it can also alter the way that we have them in our list. And the fact that like you're listening to the commentary can change your perspective of the episode, I think is a very good thing to talk about. Whereas like we're talking about our personal experiences as an adult through our viewpoints of these episodes. And I think it's cool that can actually alter the way you feel about an episode. I think that's good when you learn the backstory behind what was going on behind the scenes and how it inspired real life things. And it's very interesting to listen to that as well.
So, sir, you talked up your 3 and your 2. I want to hear them both. Let's hear number 3 first.
My number 3 episode, and this is because of the fondness I have for the character on the rewatching, is Homer Loves Flanders.
Oh, that was my bubble episode. That took my 6th spot.
It was too much fun, man. Like seeing the relationship between Homer and Ned turned on its head, where Homer just absolutely adores Flanders and keeps picking at him all the time, and the whole like Terminator 2 scene and everything, and the going through the bushes, like it was just so much fun. And seeing Ned get pissed off and then Homer coming in and actually one-upping him one more time at the end, but by one-upping him he's actually making people love Flanders again. Like there was just it's too much of a good thing, a bad thing kind of aspect to the episode that I really enjoyed about it.
That makes total sense. I had that on my bubble. I loved everything you just mentioned about it. The idea that Homer and Flanders were actually role reversed slightly to some extent, in that Homer was driving Flanders crazy, but for legitimate reasons. Like there's so much to love. And then of course, Nacho Man. I want to be a Nacho Man. You can't beat that. So
Which is the first time I ever saw that hat, and I have always wanted one since.
I'm telling you, that should be a thing. There should be more cheese and dip based like clothing items that we can wear, that we can just break off a snack as we're walking down the street.
But it's the whole aspect of it is when we talk about role reversals and Homer as a character overall, when he does something, he always does it too much. Where like even though they role reversal and he's the annoying one, he takes it like to the extreme of extremes. Whereas when Flanders is annoying him, it's for like the smallest, dumbest things that would never annoy another person. But it's always that selfishness of Homer where when the shoe's on the other foot, he takes it way too far. I love seeing that, and you can call that character development, I believe.
I think that's totally fair. And I also want to go ahead and hear your number 2, since you said that both of them are going to surprise you. Let's go ahead and just move on to that.
This one completely caught me off guard, but everything about this episode, I just got a lot of enjoyment about. It was, it felt very personal, and the ending I thought was very sweet, and just, obviously everyone knows I love the character, but I went with Rosebud with Mr. Burns, and I thought it was just a beautiful episode, man, for like all the wrong reasons. it spoke to me a lot more later in life than it did as a child, and I just really, really enjoyed the hell out of that episode.
I 100% understand why you'd pick that one. In fact, I believe that might be the highest rated episode according to IMDb in season 5. Nope, that's not quite right. It's an 8.9 and Rosebud is actually a 9.1. There's another one that I think might be a 9 as well. Maybe I'm wrong.
You said Rosebud was a 9.1?
Yeah, Rosebud's a 9. No, I'm sorry. Cape Fear is a 9.1. Rosebud is an 8.9. So those are the 2 highest rated episodes of the season. I completely can side. I mean, the whole Bobo journey is just fantastic. The heady bags cost extra for the food.
Yes.
Just so much to love about Rosebud.
And the Maggie interaction with Mr. Burns at the end, where like Homer won't give up this raggedy old doll because it's about the happiness of his child, when we know any other parent would cave on the money. Like, it makes you love Homer a little bit more too. And then the final exchange between Burns and Maggie, where she willingly gives it up and they're all left with absolutely nothing. Like, it's a beautiful ending in my eyes.
Couldn't argue even a little bit. Beautiful episode. And I believe that was the last one that Conan O'Brien worked on as well, if I remember correctly.
Good job, Conan.
Well, technically, I think he was part of the Treehouse of Horror, but that was his last full episode, I should say. I'm going to go ahead and give my number 2, which I'm like 99% confident is going to be your number 1. I'm going with Boy Scouts in the Hood. And this is my episode that came out of nowhere. And what I mean by that sounds harsh because it's not that I didn't have fond memories of this episode. I did. I mean, the Super Squishy was great. There was a lot to love about this whole concept with the river raft gone awry and everything. But when I first looked over the list, I remembered liking it. I didn't remember loving it. And oh my God, did I love this episode for weeks after, and even a little bit still now. I constantly sing Springfield, Springfield, it's a hell of a town. I mean, just all the time. I hum it underwater when I'm in scuba.
Man.
Like, absolutely. It's just such a good song. That was probably the most fun song. I had a good time singing that one with you a lot. That was a really fun episode to record, which is another reason it jumped high up on the charts. And that just leaves our number 1s, Richie. I think I already spoiled yours, or I'm pretty sure I know yours, but I'm going to once again flip it around and say, let's bump it to our bottom 1s. I'm going to go with the episode Lady Bouvier's Lover. It wasn't a bad episode. It did have one sequence that I'm very fond of, and that's that jazz sequence with Homer and Abe. That one, just that moment, or that brief series, it really sticks out in my head a lot, especially with the animation that they went with. But all in all, one of them has to be the worst of the season, and this one just didn't entertain me on the same level that all the other episodes did.
I can understand that. I wrote down 3 episodes that I thought might be towards the bottom, and that was one of them. And that was the one I thought you would pick, especially when you said it's from a recent one. But because of the jazz scene and because of the Charlie Chaplin bit, I was like, that puts it a little bit higher up on my list than the bottom. You probably know what mine is. You mentioned it earlier, but not in regards to me. But mine's Marge on the Lamb. I did not like the third act in Marge on the Lamb. I get the Thelma and Louise thing, but it didn't feel like there was a whole lot in the ending of that. And yeah, there's funny parts with Wiggum and Homer too, but it didn't quite have the punch that other episodes in the season did. Still has a lot of funny moments in it. It always feels like we're like berating an episode for not being great.
No, I don't think we can emphasize enough just how difficult this really is. Like to eliminate some of the, like, I'm about to do some honorable mentions in a second to sort of cheat a little bit. But it's just so difficult to find these, or to rank these episodes. And again, if that's your favorite episode, I get it. Marge and the Lamb wasn't my my least favorite. It would probably be towards the bottom half of this list. But if that is your personal favorite episode, I'm like, I totally understand why. It's so good. The waffle scenes.
Absolutely.
Good waffles stick together. That's just what good waffles do. Like shit like that is fantastic. But I agree, it does kind of go off the tracks a little bit, derailer style in that third act.
Yeah, it flew by. I remember us talking about it where it didn't seem like there was really a lot going on. But it does play into your whole infinite budget thing, which also my number 1 pick plays into the infinite budget list too. So,
Yeah, I think it's time that we reveal our number one episode, and then we'll both throw out a couple of honorable mentions there, just to make ourselves feel a little bit better about it. But I think we all know what yours is, Rich. Why don't you go ahead and reveal what you picked as your favorite episode of season 5?
Well, way to downplay something that I took time to pick and choose, Miles, you jerk. But yeah, you called it. My number one episode, Boy Scouts in the Hood, and honestly, it wasn't even close, man. Like, I had the songs in the Key of Springfield soundtrack when I was a kid, and I sang that Springfield song all the time. But I forgot how great this episode was. Like you. And when we watched it, I was along the lines of you of Deep Space Homer being at the top of the list. But there's so much heady goodness in this episode. Even though that's jokes not from this episode, I wanted to use that term there. Like, everything about it. The father-son dynamic where they try to outsmart each other by saying, Dad, will you go on the rafting trip with me? And Homer trying to play into his little joke, but then they end up accidentally going, "No," and ended up on the trip.
Reverse psychology each other.
Yeah. and I love the fact that Homer is a buffoon for the whole thing, but he is in fact the reason they live at the end because of his super powerful hunger and nose. And there's so many entertaining aspects to this episode. And Flanders is terrible at everything, is what we decided at this moment. I decided, because he's a terrible scout leader. But it was way too much fun, man. Way too much fun. There's too much to enjoy with it. There's no way I wouldn't put it at the top of the list. And it was another Sea Captain episode, very briefly.
Oh yeah, that's true. They like to use those one-off characters a lot as soon as they discover them. That still rings true in season 5. And they kept bringing back the Sea Captain again. Not as much, but still there. But yeah, again, I already talked about Boy Scouts in the Hood, but you're absolutely right. I can 100% understand why it's your number one. To me, it was battling neck and neck with the episode that I'm about to reveal. And I know you're going to accuse me of something, and I swear I tried to be as unbiased and just keep it to the merit of the episode as I could. And I truly think I did, once again. I picked Cape Fear. I love the movie. I think the parody is amazing. I just thought that it was so well done. And yet another episode that I remember so fondly as a kid, liked it at least as much, if not more, as an adult. Just the sequence with the going down the river, Bob doing the entire show tunes for Bart, who, is egging him on. And it's this clever ruse by him. And I love the back and forth with Sideshow Bob and Bart. That becomes one of my favorite episodes to get to each season when they start going on this run here. Just, I can't say enough good things. And then, of course, Carolyn Omine, once again, did enhance the experience quite a bit.
Make them away, toys. But no, I totally understand, man. And I think it is telling that we try to approach this with... We never talk to each other about
we really
what our
don't.
top episodes are going to be.
No, we keep it a secret.
And honestly, like, we talked about while we reviewed some of these episodes, well, this definitely is going to be in our top 5, but, like, we never know. I mean, there's 22 episodes, and next week could be the one that knocks another one off. But, I mean, 3 of our top 5s were similar, just in different orders. And I think that just speaks to the volume of those episodes, so...
Well, and the one that I was heartbroken to cut was Rosebud. I honestly, like, that was probably the one that deserved Homer Goes to College's spot, if I'm being honest. But I just love those college anarchy films so much that I couldn't resist. And I felt terrible about Rosebud. And honestly, there is a couple other. I had the Homer Loves Flanders in that spot. And then a couple of maybe more. Homer's Barbershop Quartet was another one that I think was an early contender that got bumped off as the season went along. But I'm going to give special shout-outs to both Springfield, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Legalized Gambling, and also Lisa vs. Malibu Stacy, because those were 2 episodes that I was, once again, they didn't make my top 5, but they made my contenders top 10 list, and I would not have guessed that either of those would have really been battling the way that they were at the end of the season.
And honestly, I love it when we rewatch an episode and it's a Lisa-centric episode, and it plays so much better now than it did as a child, because Lisa versus Malibu Stacy, I feel like, is actually quite an important episode, and there's a lot of really great moments in it too. So I like it when I go back and I see that, and I love the episode so much more than I did as a younger viewer, just because, again, we talk about it all the time. The natural thing when you're a kid is like, oh, this is about a girl and her doll, so I don't want to watch it. Or I don't want to pay full attention to it, but like it's such a good episode though. Like it's It's so much better than you remember it being, and I love that about this process. For me, my honorable mention one was Burns' Air. I love the Burns sinking in the bathtub thing and almost dying, and his little routine that I've sang numerous times since we've done it on the show, with the pre-show recording before the movie in the theater, and the Bart just being a little hellion the whole time, and actors playing the Simpsons. Bo!
Yeah.
Homer Simpson doesn't say Bo! But there's just a lot about that episode that I genuinely enjoyed, and the last moment where he says, "You're fired, Dad," but he's talking to Burns, and you just love it. And fall on Leonard's carcass, sir.
I can't argue with that at all. And again, season 5 was incredible. I had a great time revisiting it. I'm sad to say goodbye, but I'm optimistic looking into season 6 that even though it feels like there's just no way that season 5 could be topped, when I think ahead at some of the episodes that we have coming up, it's possible season 6 might once again take the crown. And on that note, Rich, real quick, just very briefly, without putting a lot of thought into it, look at the list of episodes we've got coming up and just maybe 2 or 3 of the ones that you're most excited for. And again, as we've proven time and time again on this show, that doesn't always hold up. So, but just going into it, what are some of the ones you're most excited about?
I mean, I want to talk about ones that aren't on the top of everybody's radar. Everyone knows there is an episode looming towards the end of next season.
Lemon of Troy. We can just go ahead and talk. Lemon and Troy is on both of our lists, but we're a couple others.
And obviously, like, Itchy and Scratchy Land is one of the best fun episodes of The Simpsons ever, so that one's going to be fun. I'm excited about the Sideshow Bob one coming up.
Yep.
This one is one that and it's political, so, I mean, hopefully we won't have any politicians drop by on the show to interrupt the recording. But you never know what's going to happen in this day and age.
You just never know. I totally agree. Homer Badman, where Homer does the gummy, I think it's Venus de Milo, and apparently it stuck to the babysitter's ass, so she thinks he's harassing her. That one I have very fond memories of. Homer the Great, the Stonecutters episode. How is that one going to get topped? I don't know, but maybe it'll be when Bart and the Simpsons go to Australia. There's a bunch of them coming up. I'm excited about
Grandpa versus Sexual Inadequacy. I mean, there's so many good ones.
And on the sweeter side of things, and Maggie Makes 3 has a moment that for whatever reason just makes the dust come out in whatever room I happen to be in every single time.
And dude, we also have Bart's Comet, which is a really great episode. We also have freaking Homie the Clown, where he dresses up as Krusty. I mean,
it's going to be a great season.
I can say, and A Star Is Burns, geez. I can honestly say I could very easily see, with all the emphasis I've had on Lemon of Troy, I could very easily see it not being even in my top 5 at this point.
That would be crazy if that happened, but time will tell. We will be getting there. We look forward to diving into season 6, and the only thing we have left to do is to say, once again, thank you to each and every person listening out there. We absolutely appreciate all the interaction, all the love on Twitter, all the questions, calling us out when we make mistakes even, all of it. It's just so much fun to share these memories and to revisit these memories. It's like going to a reunion with a bunch of old friends that I've never met online a lot of times. It's a weird thing to say, but it's the connection to The Simpsons is so strong. It a lot of times feels like you're just hanging out with buddies telling jokes. And I love that experience. I love so much that so many of you join us each and every week on this journey. And I just can't say enough how grateful we are for you tuning in to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show.
And on top of that, I think that just speaks to the power of the show itself. Like, it really, really does, that all these people can connect on something like The Simpsons, and that we can even speak to people that work on the show and that have been working on the show for a long time and speak to them as fans and add them into that group of people where we're just buddies talking about it.
I love seeing Mike Price interact with so many people on Twitter that are listeners of our show. In fact, he's even just recently made an appearance on another podcast, the Throwdown Thursday podcast, and it all stemmed from a conversation of a tweet that had it was one of our episodes with Mike Price on it, and I just think that's so awesome. I mean, that just shows what a cool guy he is, that he's so busy, but he makes time for the fans.
Agreed. But yeah, it's just it's all stemming from The Simpsons. So I want to thank this lifelong love affair that I've had with the cartoon show, and thank it for opening up all these avenues to all of our listeners and the writers of the show, and maybe future producers, and maybe one day future actors. I don't know, maybe, possibly. But anyways, I just want to thank you, Simpsons, for being yourselves and for entertaining us for 30 seasons. And thank you for bringing a bunch of new people into my life that we actually get to hang out with, kind of. So, I mean, it's awesome.
Awesome is the absolute perfect word to describe it. And on that note, we are going to say farewell to Season 5 of the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. We will see you next week with Season 6. But first, Richie, where can they find you online?
As always, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at @thewiz_kid23. Also, while you're on Twitter, go ahead and give our show a follow as well. That's at Best Darn Diddly. That's DIDDLY. That also works on Instagram and Facebook as well.
I am at MrMostDaysOff. That's going to work pretty much everywhere. And one last quick announcement. We've got a special little segment planned for our 100th podcast. It's going to be coming up real soon. So if you're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, hit us up with some of your favorite characters that are not members of the Simpsons family. So I think we're going with, as long as you're not a blood relative of the Simpsons, you are eligible. So submit some of your favorite characters, and we're going to have a little battle, a little tournament, a little late March Madness, because March is going to be over by the time you hear this.
We are saying blood relative, so unfortunately Grandpa Simpson is not going to be included in this tournament, so please don't request him as one. We're talking about
any
more
other
minor
character.
Side characters.
Yeah, any other character that isn't a primary character of the show, like and by that a blood relative. So send in your submissions. We'll put them into a tournament. We'll break it down and talk more about that when we get closer to our 100th episode. For now, once again, thank all of you so much for tuning into the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. We look forward to having all of you join us again through Season 6. We'll be back next week to review the episode Bart of Darkness.
And remember, if you want a president with the mostest, vote Miles for POTUS.
That's right, hashtag MrMostDaysOff for president. And until next time, be cromulent to each other.
Hey, this is the Toph, host of the Gravity Beard Podcast, a variety show with interviews and discussions on a wide range of topics. Our guests have included a viral YouTube star, a former child actor. We've even had a guy on who may have solved the D.B. Cooper case. It's a delicious box of audio chocolate. You never know what you'll get. Find it on Podbean, iTunes, and other places you listen to podcasts. It's the Gravity Beard Podcast. It's what your ears will want to be listening to.